I do think that intake process is actually like really foundational to what I do with most of my clients. I spend the first two, if not three sessions doing just like a really thorough intake with this person. We talk about everything from, of course, like what's bringing them in the door currently, which is really important, but we do a really thorough like physical history and medical history and psychosocial review and look at all of the aspects of their environment and their physiology that might be contributing to what's bringing them in the door.
Well, hello. Thank you so much for coming on the Inflection Podcast with me here today. Known you for a few years, Dr. Khandekar, and it's just awesome that we finally get to do this. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much, Anibi. I am thrilled to be here. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Of course, one of the things we've talked about, right, is typically for a lot of folks, we look at success as the tip of the iceberg, right? And we celebrate that as we should. Success is awesome. We look at a professional like you who's been in the space for over 18 years, and we're like, oh my goodness, she's doing well, she's awesome, she's good at her, stuff, and we forget all the years it took to get there. Well, I'm mildly obsessed with inflection points and the stories and the journeys that lead up to the present moment. And with that said, I'm very curious, like for you, were you always interested in psychology, as a kid and, like it's what you wanted to do, or was it something that you were led to with a series of inflection points and fortunate circumstances along the way?
So I think it's a little bit of column A and column B. I will say that as a child, I loved stories. I loved reading. I would constantly, I mean, I don't know what kid gets in trouble for reading, but I think I did.
Yeah.
Be sitting there engrossed in a book, under the covers with the flashlight kind of thing. So I always loved story. And I always really loved hearing people's story. And so I had a sense that this might be something that would be of interest for me in the long term. There's a little bit of an interesting in India, sometimes in the families, your family gets associated with a particular like field of study or occupation. And so I knew from my family lineage that at least on my father's side kind of came from like a long line of teachers
Uh,
and counselors. That's sort of what their background is in. And so I really do think some of this might be just like part of my makeup, that this is something that I was drawn to. But I will also say that I was able to take my first psychology class in high school. And I just like, I knew before I took it that I wanted to like just dive in deep. And that was something that just solidified for me, like, okay, I want to go study this. And so that set up my pathway uh, pretty
that
early
is
on in life.
awesome. Yeah, that is really cool that you got to do that in high school as well. Like I've heard quite a few people say, I had the opportunity to take this class or to do a job shadow or something like that in high school, and it really did help, point or reiterate a direction they already knew they were heading down. So that's really cool. You had that opportunity in high school.
Yeah, I was very lucky. It was like a 2-year class that they offered and um, just great foundation in all of sort of like the principles and because I think a lot of people sometimes choose a major in college because they don't know what else they want to do. But I went in, I was
Mm.
one of those few people that like really was like, okay, I love this. I think I can make this work.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll also say like I think growing up as like the child of immigrant parents in this country, in the 80s and 90s, it was tough. And I definitely dealt with my own, I think, anxiety and uh, sort of like feeling like an outsider a lot. And
Hmm.
so I do think that those personal experiences of feeling other were also influential in wanting to get to a place where I might be able to help other people who'd gone through something similar.
I'm amazing. I resonate with the feeling like an other, and I want to dive a little more into that. With the sense of, otherness. One of the things immigrants sometimes face, or kids of immigrants, It's this thing, it's like an identity issue where sometimes you move or your family moves and you feel like you're stuck in the in between where you move from, right? Like India or in my case Nigeria, like you still from that culture, but now you're inheriting certain attributes of your new culture, but you're not totally in that culture yet. So people in the current culture might see you as you're from elsewhere, but where you came from, they're now like you're no longer really one of us. You're now part of the new culture. So there's a weird in between feeling of I'm neither here nor there. I'm just curious, like if that's something that you faced or dealt with, because I've talked to immigrants and folks who've moved, and that's one theme that I have seen and I have also experienced.
Yes, I think that's exactly what I was experiencing. And at that time, there just weren't really words for it. It wasn't really, now there's a lot more discussion about these kinds of things, and it's much more like there's a lot more education about it. But at the time, I think you're just kind of going through sort of muddling. I remember feeling like, I don't know that I feel totally accepted anywhere. And I don't know that that was anybody overtly like rejecting me, but I just felt that sense of like caught between these worlds.
Yeah,
And and so I think navigating that and just not feeling like there was a settled ground as
yeah,
far as a community was certainly like it leaves you with a sense of just feeling a little bit like
yeah,
you're out floating on your own. Uh,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
And for you, right, going through that, eventually you work as a psychologist, you have your private practice, you do consultations with different entities. Like, what was that journey like, right? There's the schooling aspect, this internship or something like that, and getting experience, getting the reps to launching your business. Like, what was that? Are there notable points through that story for you that you look back on and you have aha moments from?
Sure, sure. I mean, it was a long journey to get here. And I think it's so interesting. There are like these moments that are just probably pure luck also that
Yeah,
like took you on the path that you didn't even know where you were going, but you think that you have a trajectory. And so I think doing the psychology degree in undergrad was kind of the first step. Um, and even back then, I had a lot of interest in kind of the physiological side of things. So uh, I knew I didn't want to be a medical doctor, but I still took a lot of those kinds of classes because I thought it was important.
nice.
And the reason I'm bringing that up is because I think that interest really directed my path later on. I went to graduate school at the University of Denver and got my doctorate in clinical psychology. And
Oh,
um, knew that I wanted to sort of be somewhere at the intersection of the psychological and the physiological. So I just had a lot of interest in kind of, neurobiology and psychopharmacology and those types of things, which then I think put me on the path to working in hospital systems. And so that's sort of that's a choice point, I think. And so because now I'm in private practice, but for
yeah,
the last probably fifteen years, I was working really in big major hospitals and sort of like an interdisciplinary treatment team setting.
yeah.
So I think that in its own way shaped my career path for sure. Um,
Amazing.
yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. I mean, it's really interesting. You're building a psychology business, but along the way also taking, courses in physiology and whatnot, like to give it a more whole, I guess, like perspective on the individual. Uh, that does raise something. One of the things I know you're passionate about learning and growth. I want to dive into that, right? As a psychologist, what does that look like? How do you approach staying up to date with the latest research and just continue to grow yourself through it?
Sure. There are lots of different avenues for it, but I do think working in these big systems forces you in great ways. When you're working with trainees, we've got interns and residents, and they're at the nascence, like the in some ways like the peak of their learning. And so if you don't keep up with the current trends, you can't answer their questions. And so it creates this beautiful environment where you're able to focus on your own professional development, learning the new kind of interventions and the new
Yeah,
research, in a way that I think had I not been in that setting, I wouldn't have had to. Um, so being in that system, like, sort of made it part of my daily routine. And I'm really grateful for that because now I think it's something that I crave, and want to go out and do on my own, even though I'm still in those systems, but not in the same way that I was before.
yeah,
And so it's really helped me perpetuate that learning path.
nice. With building PsychPro Consulting, the name of your practice, like what was the biggest, like if you had to go back in time to start again,
Yeah.
what would you say you do differently? Because starting a business, right, is no small undertaking, and many times you'd make lots of mistakes along the way. God knows I have my fair share of mistakes with things I have built. And like, yeah, that's what not to do. So for you, like, does anything come to mind with that?
Oh my gosh, so many.
I'm not trying to put you on blast.
No, no, no. I
But
think it's great because, man, yeah, I look back and they never taught us anything about business in our doctoral program, right? So
yeah.
I think, one of the things I would have done differently is I would have asked for help sooner. I would have asked for
Mm.
mentorship. I would have gotten involved with associations because one of the things I think I thought I had to do was like learn it by myself.
Yeah.
And I was too embarrassed to ask people for help because it was like, well, you're a doctor, you should probably just know how to go start a business, right? It can't be, it's something that you should be able to learn on your own, and it is not. And so the thing I would tell people is like, don't feel embarrassed or shamed. Like, reach out for help, reach out for help and talk to people because
Yeah.
there's so much wisdom in those communities. You can read all the books. It's kind of like doing therapy, when I think about it. I can read all the books, but until you're sitting with a client, and until you get supervision and mentorship from another person, like that practice doesn't come to life. So
Yeah. That's good.
I don't know if you
Thank
feel
you.
the same way, Amy. That's been,
Totally. No, like in my case, working in corporate for a while, and you're like, oh, I know business. I've read a ton of books. Like I have a general idea, and then you get into it and you realize there's so many things. Again, we think about the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot that is visible that you look at business and like, surely you know, that's what it is, and then you realize there's a ton under the iceberg that you don't see that's cleanly abstracted away. And it was brutal going through those lessons and think about cash flow projections, right? How do you forecast accordingly? And how do you get better at your books? Like there's so many boring stuff part of it beyond knowing how to do the work itself for why you started a business that I have found and learned the hard way and really made a lot of mistakes. And when I talk to people now about business, I'm like, I'm going to tell you all the things not to do. If you avoid some of these things that I have done, you're in a way better spot than I was. But yeah, totally resonate with that
yeah,
as you share it.
absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. And I kind of have to shout out that the Better Business Bureau, that Main Street Accelerator, which is where we were first introduced.
yeah,
It was so influential in just opening my eyes to like you're not alone in the struggle, that there are lots of resources out there. You don't even know where to look in the beginning. So I think that that was like just a
yeah,
phenomenal resource.
absolutely.
Yeah.
There is and I know many business owners face this, right? As the not knowing what you don't know is one of the most dangerous things, right? Because it's in your blind spot. And that's what where accelerators, business accelerators like the one BBB had. I'm working on a similar resource, something like that, just based on my struggles through it. And, having a team of peers who are going through the same thing or just went through that last week, for example, I can share with you, it gives you visibility into what might be a blind spot. And then working with experts who've been doing this for 10, 20, for decades, right? Who can help you preemptively avoid some of those pitfalls goes a long way. You might never experience it because they already told you about it and you course corrected, but then like you don't know how bad it would have been because
Exactly.
hey, you dodged a bullet. No, 100%. Communities like that and having a team, mentors, people you can reach out to is highly recommend to
Yes.
everyone.
Yes.
And to bring it back a little bit more to your business, like the approach, to therapy, psychology has changed over the years, but just what is one thing, one tiny sliver that for you, uh, you you use that as an approach in your practice, and that's very open-ended, right? Uh, as you go about engaging with your customers and those that need you, like, is there something for you that stands out there? Like, this is an axiom that we roll with. And I feel like you started saying that earlier already. I mean, you're a psychologist and you're taking physiology classes. I'm like, it tells me you have a mind for a whole person approach, but just wanted to throw that out there for you. Like, what does that look like if you engage with
Yeah.
folks?
Yeah, I no, I appreciate you. You teed it up for me nicely. Maybe I think I do think that intake process is actually like really foundational to what I do with most of my clients. I spend the first two, if not three sessions doing just like a really thorough intake with this person. We talk about everything from, of course, like what's bringing them in the door currently, which is really important. But, we do a really thorough, like, physical history and medical history and psychosocial uh, review and look at all of the aspects of their environment and their physiology that might be contributing to what's bringing them in the door.
Mhm.
Um, I think in my training that, and again, in this hospital setting, I'll go back to that. We don't want to be treating something psychologically that could be physical. So there are often many things that we need to get ruled out or assessed. And I think giving people that pathway to, like, as we're working here, there's some other things I want them to check out, so that we can optimize them like fully for their health because psychological symptoms overlap with lots and lots of different conditions. So I
Yeah,
think being really thorough in that process, that is, if you could do a really good intake with someone and not rush that process, it sets the whole therapy up for, uh, I think, a much better success. Um, and oftentimes I find that in just sitting down and like hearing that part of the story, you get a connection with somebody also from the get-go that, like,
yeah,
again serves that purpose of supporting them through the harder work that they're going to do.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure.
For for those listening, so you're based out in San Diego, but
That's right.
you have some things online and ways to engage online as well. But for those listening and want to engage, your services, like what places can they find you?
So the best place they can find us is probably our website, which is psychproconsulting.com. And on there we have our listing of offerings, which include individual psychotherapy. Um, I also do training and seminars. I do clinical consultation because that's one of my passions is sort of, making sure that you can give back to other people who are maybe earlier in the process or needs someone to run cases by. So that's probably the best place to find us. And
Okay,
we've got now three clinicians, there's three of us, and we all do both in-person individual therapy in San Diego, but also offer online teletherapy services throughout California. And
nice.
One of our clinicians is also licensed in Florida, so she offers telehealth in Florida. So
Okay.
those are the places that we're best found. You can also find us on LinkedIn. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I've got to shout that out. So
And I will put your links in the show notes in episode description so folks can easily just click through and engage. But thank you so much, Doc, for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
hey, thank you so much, Anivi. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity and hope that folks find some of this helpful. And yeah, reach out if
Sure.
they have any questions.
Sounds good.